Hey, we're going through a series called What's the Big Deal? And we're looking at some issues, maybe emotional character issues, that sometimes we say, well, that's just the way I am, what's the big deal? When actually God says, no, here's an area we can start to work together on. And so I want to ask you, whoever you're sitting next to, just turn to the person you're sitting next to and come up with 3 emotions that you think fall under the category of negative emotion or bad emotion. Just 3 emotions you think come under the category of bad emotion or negative emotion. Ready? Go. Okay, good. So probably you had a chance to come up with 3. Just one at a time, yell out some of the answers you came up with. Lying. Resentment. What's that? Hatred. Good. Anger. Good. Good. Any others? All right, good. And of course, I heard anger out there as well. You know that's the topic of today, so that was a little bit of cheating. But now I'm going to give you a quiz, quick quiz, 3-question quiz, and you can just call out the answer you think is correct. True or false? True or false? Good Christians don't get angry. Where's the bouncer? We need to get somebody out of here. First of all, I want to tell you, not just for the purposes of this quiz, but for the purposes of our better understanding, we need to get rid of the phrase good Christian. Number 1, it doesn't exist in the Bible. And number 2, it gives us a false understanding of what being a follower of Jesus is all about. I include it in the quiz because it's a common phrase we use, but I think we ought to just throw it out and not use it anymore. It's a false way of looking at following Jesus. Secondly, I guess I should tell you the answer. How many of you, no, I won't do that. The answer is false. Followers of Jesus do get angry. Because the one we follow got angry and gets angry. Oh, we don't like that, do we? All right, true or false? Good Christians might get angry, but they don't express their anger. Wow, you guys are educated, and I'm pleasantly surprised. So that's good. And again, I just want to throw out the phrase good Christians so much, I'm not going to use it for the 3rd question. I'm just going to say, healthy Christians or healthy followers of Jesus analyze their anger, confess it if it's unrighteous anger, and control or channel it if it is righteous anger. True or false? You guys already know everything I wanted to tell you today, so amen. I'm done. Okay, sorry to disappoint you. I'm not done. But I do actually want to look at a scripture verse as we get going on this topic. And it's from Ephesians chapter 4, verses 26 and 27. Ephesians 4, 26 and 27. Might come up on the screen. Might not. There we go. So, in your anger, do not sin. Do not let the sun go down while you're still angry, and do not give the devil a foothold. There is so much in this one verse, we will not be able to completely unpack it today, but here's a main point I want to get out of it that I hope you can walk away with, and it sounds like a lot of you already know this, so it's a good reminder. Anger in itself is not a bad or negative emotion. Anger in itself is not a sin. Anger in itself is not a sin. In fact, it says here, in your anger, do not sin. It doesn't say don't get angry. And in fact, some of the translations say, and is more accurate to the original Greek language that the New Testament was written in, be angry and yet do not sin. So it's not a sin to be angry. Anger is neither good nor bad all by itself. It's a lot like fire. Fire is neither good nor bad all by itself. But fire can be used for good purposes, or fire can be used to destroy. Fire that is fueled and out of control can be extremely destructive. Fire that is controlled can be useful and helpful. It's the same with anger. How you deal with anger will determine if it's going to be constructive or destructive in your life and in the lives of those around you. Andy Stanley, who is one of my favorite teachers in America, says when emotions take control, things get out of control. Emotions are a gift from God if they're used for their purpose. But outside of their purpose, they become a great big problem. Emotions are never meant to be the boss. Emotions are never meant to be, whether it's anger or anything else, they're not meant to control our lives. Emotions, including anger, are very much like that light on the dashboard of your car. Now, when you see that light, that warning light on the dashboard of your car go off, how constructive would it be to take a hammer and smash it because it bothers you? Not very constructive. How constructive would it be if you ignored it altogether? Not very constructive. Because what that light is showing you is to give attention to what's behind it or what's beneath it. And when it comes to those things that we call negative or bad emotions, even though God doesn't call them that, they're like those warning lights that we need to pay attention to what's behind it. Not to dismiss it altogether or to be controlled by it on the other hand. Does that make sense? One researcher, William Menninger, found that about 80% of people who lost their jobs in America, this was some years ago, pre-COVID, okay, lost their jobs not because of job incompetence or lack of skills, but because of some kind of emotional incompetence and lack of controlling their emotions, especially related to anger. 80%. What are some things that we get angry about? Just shout out some answers. So in other words, just about anything. Just about anything we can get angry about, depending on the way we look at it, feel about it, value it. You know, and by the way, I hope you'll pay attention to the way I phrased the question. I didn't say, what are some things that make us angry? Because I'm of the belief nothing makes you angry, but things reveal the anger that's already in you. And I think if we talk about things or people making us angry or circumstances, we give a power to those people or things that don't belong to them. But there are things that when I see them or experience them, I get angry. We get angry, I'm going to say we, even though most of these are ones I thought about for me, about traffic situations, long lines, disappointments, rude people, incompetence, disrespect, helplessness, hopelessness. In short, you could lump all of these things we've mentioned into this category: blocked goals or desires. Blocked goals or desires. And there's a lot we could say about that. And I'm just going to say one thing that was one of the most helpful things I've learned in my life. Let's see if I can remember what it was. One of the most helpful things I've learned in my life is that healthy goals don't include the participation of other people. I'm talking about personal goals. If you're a leader of an organization, you have to have goals that include other people. I'm talking about personal goals that include the participation or require the participation of other people are not healthy goals. You're setting yourself up for disappointment and anger. Healthy personal goals only require the participation of you and God. You and God, you and God. Full stop. And our desires are something that we take to God. Our desires are something we take to God. If we let our life revolve around the pursuit of our ultimate desires, that's not a healthy pursuit. But it says in 1 Peter, to the people of God, to the followers of Jesus, cast all your cares upon Him because He cares for you. That's what we do with our desires. We take them to the Lord. We take them to the Lord. And our goals, our personal goals, if they're healthy, don't include the participation of other people. Now there are, in one way you can categorize anger in two ways. There's the extroverted kind and there's the introverted kind. The extroverted kind, by the way, they're both bad if that's all there is to them. If that's all there is to them. You don't want either to be the boss of you. You don't want extroverted or introverted anger to be the boss of you. And there are three main natural ways of dealing with anger. We repress it, we express it, or we justify it, or excuse it. Now, when I say express it, there is a healthy way of communicating anger. I'm talking about, maybe a better way to say it is we explode it. We become the volcano. We let it build and build and build, and then we let it all out. And you know, that makes us feel good. But not all the other people we just exploded on. It's not a healthy way of communicating anger. The extroverted kind is more like the volcano. The introverted kind is more like the vault. We don't let anybody know. We throw it in the vault and lock it up. And neither way is healthy for us or the people with whom we have relationship. There are other two ways to categorize anger, and now we're going to get into something that's more helpful and less helpful. There's the kind of anger that is a problem-solving anger. Some would call this a righteous anger. This is the kind of anger that we experience when we see an injustice, or when we see people being mistreated, or when something that's right, that should be happening, isn't, or something that's wrong that is happening, shouldn't be. Problem-solving anger is solution-focused. It's creative. It's instructive. It's helpful. I mean, how many people know who William Wilberforce was? Wow, just two people? William Wilberforce was a Brit in the 1800s who just stood up and said, slavery is wrong, and we need to stop this. And it made him angry to see humans being owned by and mistreated by other humans. He got angry, and he started pushing for laws. And he spent most of his adult life doing that out of anger and compassion. And right after he died, shortly after he died, the law was finally passed in England that made slavery illegal. And that started influencing other countries around the world. Now in every country of the world, slavery is illegal because of this thing that William Wilberforce started because he was angry at what he saw. Now, slavery exists more than it ever has in the history of the world, in spite of the fact that it's illegal in every country. But the point is, there's a good kind of anger that is solution-focused and is born out of a sense of righteous justice. And that's a good kind of anger. Now, I know, I was told once, one of the ways to determine whether you're experiencing righteous anger or unrighteous anger is to ask this question. Because likely it's because of something that's happening to you. Would you be just as angry as that was just happening to somebody else? And not just you? That's one good way of determining. But problem-caused anger is an unrighteous anger. It's more about what's not happening for me that I know should be happening for me because I deserve it. Or it's about not getting what I think I deserve. It's condemning, it's critical, it's destructive, and it's problem-focused instead of solution-focused, or punishment-focused instead of solution-focused. All right. I want to answer a few questions about anger, but I want to start by saying this. None of what I ever talk to you about following Jesus is divorced from or cut off from the idea of being completely dependent on Him to help you move forward. Anybody who says, oh yeah, I'm going to tackle this problem and I got it, you're doomed to failure. And it's not just my opinion. Jesus said to His own disciples, apart from me, you can do nothing. This is all about greater dependency on Him, greater cooperation with the Holy Spirit to work in us and through us. So please keep that in mind as we continue to talk about this topic. What? I'm answering the question, what? What do you get angry about? And we've already listed a number of things. I don't know what it is for you. I tend to get the most angry about things not working right, like my printer. I would say, and I have told people, my printer, whether it's a new one or an old one, whatever printer I've ever had, I think they come with a demon when they sell them, but every printer I've ever had has been one of the greatest character-building opportunities in my walk with the Lord. And probably the greatest amount of swearing that takes place in my life is directed at my printer. And stupid drivers. You know who the stupid drivers are. It's everybody but you. So those are the two biggest character testing places in my life. But here's the question. What do you get angry about? It doesn't matter. It's different for different people. What presses your buttons doesn't press mine and vice versa. Doesn't matter. But the solution is the same. Change your perspective. Change your perspective. Your perspective is the way you look at something. And the way you look at something will often be the main difference between life and death, between salvation and damnation, between living an abundant life and living a lacking life, to being joyful and being angry and depressed. You know, when Jesus was on the cross, there was a thief on either side of him. 3 crosses. Jesus in the middle. Each person on either side was looking at the same thing in the middle. Jesus on the cross. One thief had the perspective, if you're really the Son of God, get us all down from here. And it says he began to curse him. The other thief, equal distance, same circumstance, same thing he was seeing, saw it in a different way, with a different perspective. Lord, remember me when you come into your kingdom. Same circumstances, different perspective. And it was the difference between life and death. Eternal separation, God, and together forever with Him. If we'll just change our perspective, reorient what's happening, and align it with God's perspective. Well, how do I know God's perspective? You get into His Word and get His Word into you, and that's the way you do it. Personally on your own, in groups with other people, get into His Word and get His Word into you, and that's how you begin to align your perspective with His perspective. Second question, how long do you hold on to the anger? How long do you hold on to it? Well, it's not a matter of seconds or minutes, but I just want to give you a little phrase to help you. Glance at the problem that's revealing your anger and gaze at the Jesus who wants to take it away. Amen. Glance at the problem that's revealing your anger and gaze at the... I'm not saying don't look at the problem. I'm not saying don't see the problem. I'm saying don't stare at the problem. Don't focus on the problem. Focus on Jesus and who He is and who He wants to be in you and through you. What's behind it or beneath it? It doesn't matter what is behind it or beneath it, but look for root issues. Anger is usually a secondary emotion. Driving down the road, a guy cuts me off, and I swear at him. But between that moment of cutting me off and me swearing at him, there was fear. Fear that he was going to crash into me. Many times anger is a secondary emotion. But secondary or not, what are the root issues? When I was in high school, I had a number of chores around the house, but when we had school vacation, like spring break or Christmas vacation or summer vacation, my mother would make this huge to-do list for me of extra chores to do, and one of them always included weeding the bushes around the house. And growing up in South Florida, where it was very hot, very humid, and lots of gnats flying around and getting in my nose and in my ears, I despised that job. And so in the beginning, when I was doing the weeding, to get through it quicker, I would just pick the weeds off at the top. And it looked good. But what happened 2 weeks later? And I had to go back out and do it right. So I learned over time to do it right from the beginning. Pull them up from the roots, or they're just going to come up again. And so this is the same way with issues that we deal with. Look for the roots. Ask God to reveal the roots to you. And it could be anything like violated values or unfulfilled expectations or blocked goals and desires, like we said earlier. And finally, what do you do with it? You confess it and then work on renewing your mind. Confess it to God, receive His forgiveness, but ask the question, what does God think about this? How does God see this? And continue that process of renewing your mind. And again, all along the way, help me, Lord, help me, Lord, help me, Lord. I need you, I need you, I need you. Like that song we sang today. If this were the prayer of our lives every moment of every day, think how much more we'd get through. God, I need you. God, I need you now. God, I need you. God, I need you now. This is a personal topic for me. This is a personal topic for me. I have struggled with, or I have given into, anger since my kids were little. Before that, it wasn't much of an issue. But suddenly, having a lot of little kids around the house and having my office in the home and a lot of other things that I'll mention in a moment started to show me the anger that was really there that I didn't really even know up until then. But over the years, I have received various professional counseling to look for root issues of anger. And I wouldn't say that there's always only been one major root. Sometimes it's a bunch of little roots all together. But before my last counseling experience in 2011, Vicki and I had been sleep deprived for about 4.5 years due to issues that our youngest child faced. And there had been issues in my ministry that had been difficult in the years leading up to my counseling sessions. And the people that I worked with in those days suffered greatly. Refugees who had experienced incredibly immense suffering and loss in their lives that I can't even begin to imagine. But what happened was I was taking on a lot of what they were going through. And in counseling world, they call it secondary trauma. And that was beginning to happen in my life as well. Because rather than distancing myself emotionally from my refugee friends, I would come maybe too close and take on too much of their stuff instead of just bringing it to God and leaving it with Him. And then I started, when my prayers for them and their situations weren't getting answered in the way and the timing that I thought they should be, I started getting angry at God. It wasn't just its circumstances, it was at God. And there had been a number of other things too, but all of these things together had led to some problems in my life that I had to sort out. At the time, I was diagnosing them as doubt and anger. In January of 2010, I left Greece, where we had been living at the time, to take our youngest daughter to the States for 5 months of a special kind of therapy. So it was just Ellie and me, and the rest of the family was staying in Greece. About 2 weeks before we left, we realized in communicating with the airlines that the car seat we had been using the last 20 years with our kids was no longer considered acceptable for airline travel. So we had to get a car seat, because Ellie couldn't sit in a normal airplane seat, that was up to standards. So they could tell us what we couldn't use, but they couldn't tell us exactly what we could. They said it just has to have the words on it, approved by the FAA for airline travel. Well, we couldn't find anything like that in Athens, where we lived. So it was getting frustrating, and we only got that information 2 days before we were supposed to leave. And one of those days was a holiday where all the stores were going to be closed. So at the very last minute, we're rushing around with friends, trying to find something. Never found anything with those words. Bought something we thought maybe could work, but we're very panicky because maybe it won't work, and they won't let us on the plane, and we won't get to travel, and she won't get the therapy she needs. And then I'm putting this thing in the car, and it's not connecting right, and I'm trying to get her in it, and it's not doing things right, and I'm so frustrated that I just start swearing. Now at that point, 2010, January 2010, I hadn't had a problem with swearing since I was in high school. In high school, it was very short-lived, and the Lord showed me how to replace cursing with praising Him, and the problem was taken care of until 2010. Because in that moment, when I swore, I used God's name in the swearing, and I had never done that before. And it felt good. It felt really good. And it began a habit of dealing with my frustrations and my irritations and my anger in ways that now always included swearing and using the Lord's name as a way of doing that. And little things. I would accidentally drop a piece of paper and just flying out of my mouth. Little things. Oh, I can't button my shirt in half a second flat. Swearing. Oh, I spilled a drop of water. Just coming out. Now, I knew enough then that when you respond in a way that's out of proportion to what's happening, it's showing that there's something inside that hasn't been dealt with yet. And so I started getting aggressive with my family. I started